What happens when a vampire, a werewolf, a mummy, and a witch team up to stop a mad doctor and his evil bride?
Clearly the best Universal horror monster movie that never got made. Why has no one made that movie yet?
Let's go 輝くマシンライダージャンライダーキン仮面ライダー仮面ライダーライダーライダー
And here's where things get good. While Zeo is not the best season of Power Rangers, nor even reliably in my top 5 for the franchise, it is a really damn enjoyable one. Though more for people that grew up and know the Mighty Morphin years.
Douglas Sloan, as I mentioned previously, was one of the main writers and for a time supervising producer for the show beginning in late Season 2, with Season 3 under him beginning a shift to the show becoming more serialized. And much of what was set up in that season thematically and character-wise carried onwards into Zeo, helped in how much of Zeo's origins was seeded throughout Season 3's story arc. Both Season 3 and Zeo, a total of 93 episodes, running within a total of 15 months.
And I gotta say, with the franchise now struggling to release more than 20 episodes in a given year due to contract restrictions, to do 93 in such a stretch is quite an achievement. But because of that, and much of that story arc carrying over, I need to discuss Season 3 in brief, since I haven't reviewed it yet.
At the beginning of the year, Rita Revolto, Rita's skeleton brother, came to live with Rita and Lord Zed, who had gotten married by this point. With him, he brought new foot soldiers, Tanga warriors, and damaged the original powers beyond use and destroyed their Zords. The Rangers, who now included Rocky DeSantos, Adam Park, and Aisha Campbell, who we saw previously in the Mighty Morphin movie in my reviews,
who had replaced Jason, Trini, and Zach as their actors requested contract renegotiations because Saban was getting rich off of them while they were getting less than a Screen Actors Guild paycheck because the show was non-union, thus they just went and replaced them.
Anyways, they went and got new powers by tracking down the magic ninja, Ninjor. With these new powers, they fought off the new monsters Rita and Zed would send. During this period, Bulk and Skull joined the Junior Police Force.
Yes, it is a silly concept, but it grew naturally out of their Season 2 subplot of using detective skills and forensic science to try and uncover the Rangers' identities.
Which netted us recurring character Lieutenant Jerome Stone, who reined in the two's antics as they endeavored to protect and serve. And while still bumbling about, they actually managed to succeed and be recognized for their accomplishments every now and then, since Stone was now the straight man in their routine. And bar none, he is the best third man to the Bulk and Skull band. But with things getting in a rut, the evil forces instead went about initiating acts of infiltration and sabotage, brainwashing Catherine Hillard, played by Catherine Sutherland, and giving her the power to shapeshift into a cat. We got the pun, Saban. Thanks for that. To permit a spy in the Rangers' midst for more immediate opportunities to prey on the Rangers. Because of this, they were able to steal the Pink Ranger's powers and Falcon Zord, which put Kimberly's life in danger and for a time crippled their efforts in fighting off their monsters. Eventually, Catherine was freed from their control and, because Kimberly was leaving as she had been accepted to compete as a pseudo-Olympic gymnast...
Translation: Amy Jo Johnson was leaving the show to pursue other projects.
She succeeded Kim as the new Pink Ranger. Rita's father then entered the picture, with his monster, which had the ability to absorb the power and life force of the team, tying itself to Ninjor's power as a hostage. And even the Rangers' new abilities, metallic armor...
It's glitter. It was nothing but glitter. Only done because Bandai gave a metallic paint job to existing toys as part of the movie toy line, so this tied into that. And yet, it's still better than Neo Saban Zord cockpit power armors, as they actually used them to fight monsters.
Anyways, it didn't give them an edge. What did, however, was an artifact from ancient times called the Zeo Crystal, sealed under Rita and Zed's palace by the sages who were its original inhabitants, protected in a way those of evil alignment could not breach. With it, their mechs were reinforced and the monster destroyed, so Vile decided to turn back time to a point where the Rangers were little kids.
I hate to be the one to break the news to you, Dad, but we tried this once before, and it didn't work then either.
This led into the Alien Rangers arc, where instead of the Rangers using their powers as kids to fight off the threat they faced,
because both Sentai and later Power Rangers evidence of Justin Stewart showed they could do that.
they called in another race of Rangers from across space to assist them, this group using the Kaka Ranger costumes and stock footage, with the running subplot being of the Rangers trying to undo the spell. Oh, and if you're wondering, they explain both at the beginning of this arc and at the beginning of Zeo that Ninjor ended up sealed back in his temple, and thus out of reach even through Zeo's events, ironically mirroring his Sentai counterpart that'd be found by the Gokaiger in a very similar state in 2011. So, yeah, he's not around to help them either anymore. Wobelly got restored to his normal age through a device he created in the Power Coin's energies. As a result of this plan, the Ninjor Ninja Power Coins were completely destroyed. Zordon then sent everyone but Billy to retrieve pieces of the Zeo Crystal the group had shattered, and sent across time to keep it from falling into enemy hands, which shows for once Zordon being kind of short-sighted in his planning for future inevitabilities. The crystals had locked onto the Rangers' ancestry to tie into the coming thematic the show had with ancient civilizations as a root motive for their powers, and set the lot of them on expeditions relating to this theme of learning about oneself. That was, all things considered, pretty horribly handled. Of note was Tommy learning of Native American ancestry and given one half of an arrowhead, and Asia deciding to stay where she was sent, because of an animal plague going on which her veterinary talents could help with.
Translation. Karen Ashley left the show because she felt she couldn't keep up with the pace of production. Not unreasonable because, yeah, Power Rangers shooting schedules are exceedingly rapid. And this was back in that period when episodes were as much or more original footage and plot than just what was recycled from Sentai. Plus, again, Season 3 and Zeo ran in a total of 15 months.
In her place was Tanya Sloan, who came back to the present despite, well, this not making any narrative sense to legitimize how she would be there in the present when time was reverted to normal.
Nor is any of that answered at all in Zeo, with her just pretty much taking Aisha's place in relative canon, since the show several times after this cast change assumed her to have knowledge and experience that Aisha would have, had she been there, meaning the scripts probably only got the lightest of rewrites to account for all this.
Though of her own merit, she does have a subplot about her explorer parents going MIA, and left with this tribe, in hopes that they'd come for her, at least until time got reverted to normal and Kat convinced her parents to allow her to stay with them.
Still, anyway around, it is pretty poorly explained and handled.
As time was restored, Goldar and Rito circumvented the command center's defenses to plant a bomb, which went off just as the two attempted to steal the Zeo Crystal. The Rangers teleported out of the base just as it explodes, ending Mighty Morphin Power Rangers with the villains in triumph.
Everybody got that?
And yeah, that's pretty much all the needed backstory, aside from a series of viral trailers for the show.
Yeah, to advertise how they were rejiggering Power Rangers, Saban produced a series of short promotional trailers advertising the coming siege of the show's enemies, the Machine Empire, to bring back interest to Power Rangers, which had declined during Season 3, a point I will address in a minute. It was taken to be the next stage of Power Rangers, pretty much because Bulk and Skull were involved in them, and as Saban's Masked Rider is and always shall be an abomination, they didn't think it was just another spin-off series set in its own continuity.
Unfortunately, the tales showcased in those shorts were non-canon. While very menacing in tone, it wasn't the direction they were taking things in with the show, which, while keeping things serious like O Ranger originally wanted to be, it didn't forget the fun or lighter-hearted elements of Mighty Morphin, which ironically led to it being an all-around more successful entry than its Sentai counterparts, mainly because it actually succeeded at balancing both extremes, which has always been a problem with Sentai, and Zeo kept it all in a cohesive narrative that didn't forget to address character.
This is probably because, according to Jackie Marchland, the longest rider Power Rangers ever had, Doug Sloan's method of adapting Sentai for Power Rangers was a case of having the writers sit down and watch the Sentai before they wrote anything so they would know what they had as a resource, and then let them be free to come up with concepts and craft their own stories within reason. This is what really helped Sloan's years remain distinct, as they never felt slave to the Sentai material like later ones would be, Which is why for many, even to this day, they're fondly remembered, as they never seemed like an inferior knockoff of a better story, but something distinct with their own original storytelling.
As a result, amongst fans, Zeo is still considered to be a high watermark season for it culminating the stories and events we've been engaged in for the last 153 episodes. And for a lot of fans that only stuck around until everyone but Bulk and Skull had left, this is as good as it got, bar a few points of infamy I will be addressing.
Which is a bit odd, as according to statements from Saban's staff,
I'm specifically going from information supplied by Saban official Peter Dang, as this is a less investigated period of the show, so we don't have as much concrete information as we would like.
Zeo was the second Power Rangers season to underperform against expectations and ratings, with Zeo in Season 3 being lower in viewership than had been seen previously despite the far stronger story and overall jump in writing quality widening appeal. It was still highly successful, but not to the same degree as Seasons 1 and 2, and was not sustainable in its current form and state. And Season 3's toy line saw a significant drop in sales again in comparison to prior years.
Though, 1, Season 3's toy line was only out for about 6 months. It's hard to have comparable sales in half the given time. 2, outside of the Megazords, most of the merchandise was recycled items from the prior years. Hell, they re-released Titanus from Season 1. Twice. It's hard to shell new crap when it's barely distinguishable from the old stuff, or the only difference is an artificial gimmick like Kung Fu Action, or a voice box, or that stupid morphing flip-head dolls that always creeped me the hell out as a kid. Their eyes were soulless and empty!
Still, Season 3's downturn in viewership led to the show retooling itself to cut costs, moving to once again using Sentai stock footage for small-scale Mook and Monster Brawls, alongside once more mimicking the stories from the related Sentai, which would permit much farther longevity than what Mighty Morphin was permitting to be possible by solely swapping out the Megazord stock footage every year. And while they still shot original material, it was all done so the show could be more sustainable with this dip, and time has shown that to be a good decision they should have started doing long before.
However, it doesn't quite gel with my experience back then. This is speculation on my part as I have little evidence, but if you look at the episode release information for Season 3 in Zeo, episodes were erratic in their debuts, varying between the week and even day, which made it more difficult for fans to catch new episodes as they premiered, especially because it was difficult back then to know when there would be new ones if you didn't subscribe to a magazine that gave you air dates or just watched everything. Since new episodes were not advertised and the internet didn't have such resources, nor was widely available as a resource.
One such instance I remember clearly was I missed the final part to the Master Violin Metallic Armor multi-parter, and by the time I caught new episodes again, everyone but Billy was a kid, the powers had been destroyed, and there were fishmen in bad masks that were suddenly the new heroes. What the hell did I miss in the months between those incidents?
Seasons 1 and 2 in comparison aired a lot more evenly, releasing consistent blocks of episodes before going on hiatus and then repeating themselves. That pattern didn't come back until Turbo.
And worse, in North America, Season 3 and Zeo had been moved from a morning slot before school started, where Seasons 1 and 2 aired most of their content, to the infamous 3 p.m. programming death slot that has murdered innumerable television shows in their sleep.
And for programming primarily intended for children demographics, it would be airing before many kids would be home from school or daycare services. And this is another thing they fixed when Turbo aired. I also clearly remember that I eventually got so frustrated with this that we managed to fix our VCR so its clock function actually worked, a near impossibility to do unless your parent was an engineer back then, which my dad was, and used blank VHSs and the time-delayed recording feature to record episodes I wasn't home to see. This is how I ended up seeing most of Zeo, by the way, as at the time I'd be stuck in after-school daycare until past 6 due to both my parents working late. Hell, I still have a VHS tape with a Golden Homecoming and A Brief Mystery of Time recorded from their original broadcasts. That's how I know this crap.
Both of these give context to why they may have seen the ratings drop despite the series still being immensely popular at the time, as supposedly, since we don't have the official records, Season 3 and Zeo still murdered every other show in the 3 p.m. death slot to rank in at number 1.
But this could have easily given the illusion that there was a decline in interest for the show since, If this was true for other fans and not just my personal experience, then even if they knew a new episode would be on, fewer people were able to catch them on premiere.
This is important for our purposes as this apparent decline in ratings led to the infamous production split during Turbo. Doug Sloan wanted to continue with the maturing and growth thematics they had built, but ultimately losing creative control over the show to the point it almost got cancelled. Whoops.
Fortunately, those would be picked up again later on, and the franchise would enter an era of more serious tales that, in my opinion, were some of its best years. But that's the tale for another day. Let's discuss Zeo.
Though, have you seen echoed ghost-like distortion in some of my footage?
That's because there's something wrong with the DVD collection sets out there, and how the video quality of this season is off. I have no idea why, maybe the master films were damaged, but I've not seen this in the other sets thus far. Honestly, the bootlegs I got rid of because there's a legal DVD had better video quality.
Anyways, let's begin as always with the theme song, which Ron Wasserman composed as a sequel song to the original Mighty Morphin theme, and in my opinion took such up to 11. This is really the only song that's thematically good for echoing the tune of the original song, because this was carrying on from the Mighty Morphin era, and did original things with the composition.
As opposed to the Neo Saban music, which all feels like an atonal ripoff attempting to badly echo the original, which over time just all blurs together into generic running noise.
But this works as it's still focused on how things are differing from the past years in its structure, and the faster beat that still captures the energy of the original song, just in a differing way that permits it to have a distinct feel you wouldn't confuse with the original season's scoring at all, as has been the problem with Samurai, Megaforce, and to an extent Dino Charge's themes. A Zeo beginning kicks off the run in the aftermath of the Command Center's destruction, quickly recapping its events for those who hadn't seen, much like I did to kick off this review. Rita and Zed celebrate their victory, only to find they're being dethroned as the series' villains.
Daddy, I think we're in trouble!
By forces even they fear. The unstoppable onslaughts of machines. Thus, Baranoia's counterparts, the Machine Empire, a bit on the nose there, with them then introducing Bacchus and family's counterparts named Mondo, Machina, and Sprocket, with their butlers Clank and Orbis, and the army of cogs for their war machine.
Yeah, the writers sure were in a punny mood for those names. They fit, though.
Zed's forces flee from the onslaught, destroying their palace.
I can't believe it! I was just beginning to like this place!
And leaving them no choice but to move in with Rita's dad. For now.
See you guys once you get the Camper of Evil!
Though plot hole for down the line, the lot of them leave on Serpentera. Makes one wonder how it ended up back on the moon for Forever Red.
It's almost as if the writer and producer were selective and revisionist about continuity or something.
Somehow, however, Goldar and Rito drop the Zeo Crystal when they escape the facility, which is found in the Command Center's rubble. The group uncovering it, and are dragged down into an auxiliary section of the facility, as the Command Center's external appearance rebuilds itself because of, magic?
What? That's a legitimate explanation in this case, since Power Rangers always managed to balance both mystical and technological aspects of its setting.
Still, they meander about for a while, before the voice of Alpha 5 directs them into the new Command Center set. That's of the Power Chamber.
Which definitely seems more like an ops center for a superhero team than the stage set the first 3 seasons ran with.
Though speaking of Rito and Goldar, we have sadly one of the worst aspects of the season and the first misstep. Due to whatever they were whammied with to drop the Zeo Crystal, Goldar's been depowered and both have had their memories scrambled, and are then found by Bulk and Skull. Bulk and Skull then proceed to take advantage of the two's helpless state to make the pair that have antagonized them for years into their own personal minions. In some aspects, this is certainly karma for the two, since this refocuses the slapstick of Bulk and Skull's bits. In others, it seems like something the two would have grown past due to their job on the police force. So for many, even with the schadenfreude that would occur from the pair acting as jerks, it's ultimately considered negative character growth for the pair.
And sadly one we're stuck seeing until they resolve it 30 episodes in, after which it's just best dumped in the garbage bin and forgotten. Fortunately, it rarely factored in past the premiere until its resolution, as if the writers were trying to forget about it as much as they could if in realization it was a bad idea. As such, I'm just skipping past those bits since they're really not relevant.
Though, goddamn, did some of the intricate activities they had them doing make me want to applaud the suit actors. As this was the point the excessive head bobbing took a sharp decline on the show, thanks a lot, Koichi Sakamoto, this is pretty good in-suit acting. As Zordon reveals the threat of the Machine Empire, the Zeo Crystal is showcased to not only be the power amplifier they've used it for before, but will now serve as the direct source of their powers. Only there are 6 of them and 5 crystal pieces. Thus, due to how much Billy's technological talents have both improved and shown themselves to be invaluable in the last stages of the conflict against Rita and Zed, he chooses to step down and let Tanya, the newest of them, have a shot at being a hero, as he falls into effective retirement to be their tech expert.
We'll swing back to that later. But this shift, at least early on, was well handled with how they used it to make him Power Rangers' counterpart to Miura, and it did seem an appropriate development with how he'd supply the team's arsenal and significant support.
It still seems kind of weird that you're not going to be there with us, Billy. But I will, just in a different way.
Yeah, hey, once a Ranger?
Always a Ranger.
And you all thought Overdrive came up with that phrase, didn't you?
And thus, with the crystals reformatted into their morphers and the Machine Empire sending their first wave, it is time.
Zeo Ranger 1, pink! Zeo Ranger 2, yellow!
Zeo Ranger 3, blue! And now, Vegas!
I'm going to do this with every one of his transformations. Wait, I didn't do it with his morph when I reviewed In Space. Damn it!
And thus, it's immediately on to original suited action footage that, while less explosion-heavy than O-Ranger's early battles, is more appropriate for countering an initial scout force since the Empire just got here, featuring some of the earlier work by stunt director Koichi Sakamoto and his Alpha Stunts team.
1, 2, 3, Rider Kick!
Though in some respects, it's kind of ironic due to how he'd utilize a mix of stunts and pyrotechnics more reminiscent of many of O-Ranger's fights later in his career.
And no, I'm not referring to Cal Explosions. I'm talking about post-Zordon Saban and his later Toei and Tsuburaya work. Sakamoto had near zero involvement in direction and stunt work during the Disney years.
A Zeo beginning really should have been one episode with how much it was padded out, and sadly this was a problem with all of the season openers of the Zordon era, none more so than the previous season's Ninja Quest. It gets all the essentials in, but as much as there's epic stuff going on, there's also a lot that leaves you feeling bored. Shooting Star settles Tanya into life in Angel Grove, with her already making friends, and more than friends, with the short-lived recurring character of Sean, who, over several episodes, reveals himself to be a dick. But he's mostly used as a means of fleshing out Tanya's own character and morality for the audience, with how he tempts her repeatedly with the douche side of the Force. Unlike the others who had years of content to build their personas over time, Tanya's been dropped into things in an era where everyone's more defined, so it's nice that the first few episodes took the time to focus on establishing her properly and get the fans to like her, which this subplot more than facilitates.
As well, yes, her introduction to Aisha's exit is poorly handled, it's not long before it feels like she's always been there, despite being much different than Aisha and Trini were.
Still, as Bulk and Skull test out their newly refurbished patrol bike, which ends up impounded in a mid-credits scene.
Oh, and speaking of, whoever thought of cutting together a bloopers reel to play as part of the end credits starting with Season 3? You are a genius.
They come across a Machine Empire scout group out searching for the newly constructed Zord Bay for the Zeo Zords in an attempt to deal with them, though it's not explained how the Machine Empire learned of them being constructed by Billy and Alpha.
Building a giant robot. That's certainly a dream many would like to achieve.
Though it's made clear their mecha aren't finished yet as they deploy them against the first major wave, getting to this much faster than O-Ranger did, which pays off in Target Rangers when, Mondo steals software from a science project for use in one of his robots.
Really? That's how you're menacing the Rangers? By causing them to fail their classes?
Well, he installs it in Silo, and at least this is a decent conundrum in how something they value is put in jeopardy by monster destruction that might trip them up, an aspect the show had moved into with Zed, but also shows some of the teething troubles the writers had in transitioning to a wholly differing villain faction that didn't have magic as a means to facilitate that kind of personal connection to the threat of the week.
Though, what do I know? The game Rocky and his project partner made was said to be bugged. Maybe it generated bugsters.
But as is made obvious by the stock footage, this completes the mini-arc of the Zeo Megazord's construction as Billy finishes the battle helmets. And in this case, with the team being unawares of them unlike their Sentai counterparts, the jeopardy they're in is a lot more tangible until Billy reveals their existence. For Crying Out Loud continues the schoolwork plots, with Tommy and Kat being given the first of the forced shipping incidents of the season, which I will address later. This involving the cliche of them pretending to be married and care for a baby as part of an assignment, made literal instead of with a stand-in, by Catherine choosing to babysit a neighbor's baby as realism for the assignment, to facilitate adapting Oranger Episode 12 and the Sonic Screams of Death.
I remembered this one and prepared myself!
Hello, little Johnny. No, don't!
Yeah, they definitely modulated the sound better here!
Though I'm impressed they got a kid that even slightly resembled the one from the stock footage so they could use it. And the segue to why there'd even be a baby around is far better as it's facilitated by one of them, and not just an at-random act. Likewise, Mondo utilizing this plan in response to their actions makes more sense than the paranoia just seeing something at random they dislike about humans, even though the arc of the episode is pretty much the same. Rangers in the outfield cycles back to Tanya and her continuing character conflict with Sean, as Tanya, who knows nothing about baseball,
because she grew up in Africa and skipped about 10 years of her life thanks to timey-wimey,
discovers she's good at baseball. Mainly, she's got excellent hand-eye coordination, which the school team coach sees due to a foul ball. But instead of Sean being happy his de facto girlfriend is good at and enjoys something he's passionate about so they'd share a common interest that is a framework for a good relationship, he proves himself to be the designated dick sent up to bat. As I really don't care about sports, I really don't care much for the A-plot outside of Tanya finally having enough of Sean's asshole antics to give him the boot. Otherwise, this is to facilitate turning Bara Vacuum into a pitching machine robot.
That honestly makes more sense design-wise with respect to the suit than a vacuum.
Which Sprocket sends after them, managing to abduct Rocky so the Cogs can steal his Morpher, though why Rocky's Zeonizer would be in his bag is odd since, as the series moves on, they're shown to manifest them on their wrists from nothing, presumably them being teleported onto their wrists by hand motions.
I'm going to call continuity error caused by retcon on that one. Then again, since they were adapting a Yuji is a Butt Monkey episode, it kind of works since Rocky does have the history of being portrayed as a bit of a slacker. Or need I bring up the pachinko machine incident?
Every Dog Has His Day is another example in my ongoing thesis of how Power Rangers can, or at least used to, through adaptation, fix more lackluster stories or elements of the series they were handed. And even in this era, it was mainly done through character and keeping a more centralized focus.
AKA ejecting unnecessary overfocus on guest actors over the freaking lead characters.
In this case, it takes the dog focus of Ranger 13 and makes it into a civics project Kat's been involved in, helping to train the town's first search and rescue dog, Smokey.
Considering the state of Angel Grove's police force and the monster attacks, this edition's probably long overdue.
Better trained than a lot of my recruits.
Still, since Angel Grove's in California, it's along the Pacific Rim of Fire, so it's easy to facilitate the monster digging for magma aspect of the plot, even without Mount Fuji. As Smokey's been trained to sense danger, his running from the group towards the occurrence facilitates Kat learning of the operation, though as she similarly twists her ankle, it's used as a mean of showing her own resourcefulness, and that of the animal she helped to train, to last on her own until she manages to make contact with the others and recover from her injury, something that was less of an element when this story was done with Momo, since it was more focused on the frickin' dog spirit. The Puppet Blaster serves as a parody of children's entertainment.
What's that? Power Rangers is children's entertainment? Or we're more talking the Short Bus Brigade stuff of the likes of Captain Kangaroo, Bozo the Frickin' Clown, and Pee Wee Herman's Playhouse.
And considering they were handed that damn puppet animatronic, I don't exactly blame them for going that route, as it's something more setting-fitting than plotting to have a robot run for political office.
And seriously, Hirohisa Soda, what the hell were you on?
When Ernie's Juice Bar plays host to a live performance of a children's entertainment show, with star focus on a juggler and his robot-costumed clown companion, Bondo sees this as a way to subjugate humanity's future by brainwashing the youth through a cyberformed version of the performer. First through this live performance, and then, as they upgrade and increase the range of its power, the world.
You'll have to get through my army!
Anyone think this might have been entertaining had they decided to mimic the movie's Leap to Our Doom subplot with this story? But I've actually put a level of menace to all this aside from a generic mind control story.
The episode's B-plot also has Adam training Tanya in martial arts to bring her up to snuff with the rest of the team's capabilities in that department. And as this is episode 8 in the season, it's a bit overdue. Though more than cats seem to get. But it's certainly a much better, if albeit shorter focus, as opposed to the chaos-causing kids, as children are, and always will be, terrible actors. This is also where the show chooses to introduce the Defender wheel in a different way. Though honestly it felt overdue since they'd already fought 2 monsters that in stock footage were killed by it. It seemed late to do so by that proxy, but in fairness it did serve to pace out such arsenal, so story-wise, it's justified by Billy taking the time to build the damn thing. Invasion of the Ranger Snatchers, as I mentioned back when I reviewed O-Ranger the movie, adapts the movie into a 20-minute normal episode that plays a bit better with the premise of movie madness and how it makes fun of general behind-the-scenes shenanigans.
He can't block my punch, he's just an alien! I'm a star! What? Are you all right? I may have sprained a pinky.
Spielberg directing joke, JDF ego joke, we're walking.
Actually, since they're doing the Spielberg parody with the director, I wonder if this in any way later influenced the George Spielberg joke from Akiba Ranger. Since Akiba Ranger got Koichi Sakamoto to play him, Sakamoto is one of the head action directors for most of the original Saban years, including Zero, before getting kicked upstairs during Disney. And that Akiba Ranger episode was the one making fun of Saban's modern adaptation tendencies from the perspective of Sentai fans who disliked how such had devolved from alternate but equal into rote bastardization. Anyways, as Rocky, Kat, and Tanya get jobs on a B-movie as extras, this activity gets Sprocket in the movie-making mood, stealing costumes for the set as Rocky gets the chance to be promoted to main character, and this incident screwing over his sudden dreams of making it as a star.
Let's be honest here, the back injury was what did that in. At least in universe, Steve Cardenas left Power Rangers after Zeo to start his own karate school.
Also, holy crap, that's the robot monster from Mars costume! Wow, they really went all in for the sight gags to cinema in this one when you start looking through the original footage.
To be like the human, to laugh, feel, want. Why are these things not in the plan?
The team ends up trapped in TV land thanks to Sprocket, with their ultimate plan being to botch the planned scene so much the events they're trapped in go off the rails. Though considering they're already trapped in stock footage, they're not really escaping. Thus, their gambit feels kind of Inception-y.
A happy ending? That wasn't my directorial vision.
I wanted my ending to be multiple choice, where no one makes any good decisions at all, because they're all too stupid to ask the obvious questions. And the evil robots win unless you decide to kill off the good robots that are your allies. Yes, I am still pissed at the Mass Effect 3 ending.
Though the film cropping for this one is kind of obvious, since O-Ranger's movie was in widescreen, meaning some of the stock footage seen in other O-Ranger episodes seems, well, kind of off.
I mean, I know everything was in standard definition for television back then, but I would have figured they'd at least substitute the stock footage bits. I'm stuffing cotton balls in my ears to review a 20-year-old Power Rangers series. What has become of my life?